Good evening, book lovers. Welcome to another episode of Cath-Lit Live. I am your host, Amy Cattapan. You can find me everywhere on social media under the pen name for my children's book. So that's AJ Cattapan. Welcome to another episode where I meet with a Catholic author who has a new book that released recently. This is a return guest, but she's got a totally different book and even a different publisher from the last book that we talked about. So today I have with you Joan Watson, who's going to be talking about her new book, Coached by St. Catherine of Siena, Lessons in Charity. And this is from Scepter Press. So if you're not familiar with Joan, or if you weren't here the last time I interviewed her, let me share a little bit about her. Joan Watson is a Catholic speaker and writer who loves to make scripture, theology, liturgy, and history accessible and applicable. She currently works as Pilgrim Formation Manager for Verso Ministries, a Catholic company who aims to facilitate encounters with Jesus Christ through pilgrimage. With a bachelor degree in history from Christendom College and a master's in theology from Franciscan University of Steubenville, she has worked for the church and various religious apostolates for 20 years. She is also a contributor to the work of the St. Paul Center for Biblical Theology, teaching 2 courses on Emmaus Academy, and also as one of the 6 weekly presenters on their podcast, Letters from Home. She's the author of several books, the most recent, Coached by Catherine of Siena, Lessons in Charity from Scepter Press. Propelled by Luke 12:48, she is passionate about helping others encounter Christ and enter into friendship with him through their daily circumstances of life. So please help me welcome Joan Watson back to Cath-Lit Live. Hi, Joan.
Hi, Amy. Thanks again for having me.
I am so happy to have you back to talk about one of my favorite saints. I like to say I retroactively asked her to be my confirmation sponsor.
I love
because I grew up at a time, my mom was the DRE at the time I was confirmed. And she had heard from the bishops that people should try to use their baptismal name to show a connection between the sacraments of initiation. Well, I was baptized Amy. There is no Saint Amy. I think I ended up writing a report on maybe Saint Anne because it was the closest to Amy that we could come up with. But I never really felt like I had a confirmation saint. And so years later, especially when I got into writing, I thought, I think I want to ask St. Catherine of Siena to be my retroactive confirmation. I love it. So I love that you have this new book about her out called Coached by Catherine of Siena, Lessons in Charity. Give us the elevator pitch. What is the deal with this book? How are we coached by Catherine of Siena?
Yeah, so the book is part of a series that Scepter Publications, Scepter Press has put out in Coached by various saints.
Okay.
So I think the first one was Coached by Joan, but they have Coached by Jose Maria Escriva. They've Coached by St. Paul. St. Philip Neri, I think, was the one right before mine. And the idea is, what if the saint was your spiritual director? What if the saint was your life coach? And I chose Catherine on purpose, first of all, because she was a spiritual director for so many through her writings. And so many people see Catherine as distant and far away. She's this mystic. She has these incredible experiences in prayer. I mean, if you can think of a mystical experience, she's had it, right? Stigmata, mystical marriage to Christ, right? Levitation, like everything, right? Catherine's done. And I wanted to show that Catherine was not a saint because of those things, but because of her charity, because of the way she lived her life for others, for God, for others, and for the church. I like to think that Catherine we should probably wear red on Catherine's feast day because she really died a martyr for the church. And so what I did was distill these amazing letters. She wrote over 400 letters and distilled those letters for us because she wrote to lay people. And sometimes we only think of the great things she did and the mystical things she did and the things that, like, she wrote to the Pope, and forget that she wrote to lay people and she wrote to people just like us. And so what can we learn from that? What would she tell us if she was our spiritual director?
Lovely. I love that concept. Okay, so let's dig in a little bit more. How is the book framed now? Because it's a mentoring coaching thing. So tell us about what inspired you to frame it this way. And like, is it like a day by day kind of a thing inside?
It's actually in 3 separate sections: love of God, love of neighbor, and then love of the church. The theme is lessons in charity. Because again, I think Catherine's misunderstood. And when we talk about Catherine, a lot of people just talk about her telling the Pope what to do.
Yeah.
Like she just went and wagged her finger around at everybody, right? And so we forget, or we don't know because it's not talked about, that her primary message is that of love, is love of neighbor, love of the church. Her letters are remarkably tender. And if she ever tells the Pope what to do, it's after she's called him daddy, she's told him she loves him, and she's fasted and prayed for him. So I think there's a good reminder to us of where the spiritual life should be grounded, and it should be grounded in love and then come from love. So we start with love of God. We talk about the prayer life, how to build a prayer life, how to live our lives, how to deal with temptation, how to deal with spiritual discouragement. The second part then is love of neighbor. What does this love of God call me to do? And then the last part is love of the church, because the church is our neighbor, and sometimes she's very hard to love, but Catherine loved her.
That's great. I love that idea, because you're right. We do tend to think of her in a certain way, but sometimes it's not until you dig into those more private things that they did. And I can see that because I've dug into the letters of Mother Cabrini. I've dug a bit so far into the letters of St. Ignatius of Loyola. You do see a different side of them than what is often presented out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you see their heart rather than kind of the caricature sometimes that we paint. Either media paints it, or, we just kind of paint it in our minds as caricature and then when you read their actual words, you're actually seeing their heart, and it's an intimate knowledge of them.
Okay, so tell me about how, we live in this age. A lot of people are pretty disillusioned with the institutional church. Maybe some more of those, well, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious kind of people out there. So how does Catherine's approach maybe appeal to people or help people who feel that disillusionment?
Yeah. So, we hear today sometimes like, oh, we're living in hard times and it's never been worse. Like you hear these kind of hyperbolic statements about like, it's never been harder to be a Catholic. And it's like, oh, honey, like we have nothing on the 14th century. Like, look at Catherine's day. Catherine, like we think of her maybe with the Avignon papacy because she was instrumental in bringing the Pope home from Rome or home to Rome from Avignon. That's the least of her trouble. Like we had her like mediating between Florence because the Pope put all of Florence under interdict, which means they couldn't receive the sacraments because of like a political squabble. Can you imagine if that would happen today? We'd lose our ever-loving minds, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then she has to deal with schismatics that are finding another Pope and elect another Pope, right? So Catherine has her hands full, but she loves the church. She loves the church. She doesn't just love the people of the church. She loves the church. And so I think nowadays we talk about like, oh, I would love to tell the Pope what to do and I'll write a letter of a Pope. And I'll be like, well, you can tell the Pope what to do and you can be Catherine after you're Catherine and you fast on only the Eucharist or you pray like crazy for him. And I think Catherine reminds us that everything comes out of love. And she loved the church so that she sacrificed her life for it. She prayed. So as soon as we're praying like Catherine, then we can write letters to the Pope and tell him what we think. It's her prayer life that's so important, and that light, that relationship with Jesus Christ, that then that love comes from. And so I wrote this book about Catherine, and it was interesting. I was writing it. I had just finished it when the conclave happened. And, like I was thinking, okay, who's ever elected, we got to love him. We have to love him because he's Peter. He's our shepherd. And so it was neat to be reading her writings as we're getting a new shepherd. And like it or not, we have to love him and we have to support him and we have to pray for him. Yeah. So Catherine really helps us with all of that.
Yeah, and we're living at a time where there's a lot of people who think they're holier than the Pope. They know a lot more than the Pope does. We should at least pray, fast, and study as much as he has before maybe we start criticizing. If not getting to St. Catherine's level. Right.
Amen. Yes. I mean, everything has to come after prayer. And so like, come talk to me after you're praying for the Pope, then we can talk about criticizing him. But pray for him first.
Pray for him first. I love that. All right. So is this book just for people who, like you and I, who are fans of St. Catherine, or who is this for? Who's your ideal reader?
I really hope this book introduces Catherine to people who don't know her, who are a little scared of her. I heard from somebody that they started reading Sigrid Undset's biography of her, which is one of the most famous biographies. Yeah. And they were kind of repulsed by certain things in her life, because she's so radical, right? And I love that biography. I'm like always recommending it to people.
It reads almost like a novel. That's what I enjoyed about it.
It really does. It really does.
Yeah. But she was intense.
She was intense. And you read it and you're like, ooh, I can never be a saint because I'm not this, right? And she lived at a different time, and there were some practices in her spiritual life that we would not
Uh-huh.
recommend now, right? We're not
Mhm.
recommending that you beat yourself and that you scourge yourself, right? Like, they
Yeah.
were not recommending that. So I wanted to bring her to a new audience that says, oh, I can actually be a saint. I
Mhm.
can't be Saint Catherine, right?
Mhm.
I can't. And Catherine, actually, I start the book out by saying Catherine would never want us to be Catherine. In fact, there was a woman, Daniela, who was a third order, what we'd call a lay Dominican now, which is what Catherine was. And she wanted to be exactly like Catherine. And she thought her spiritual life would just be in imitation of Catherine and just be Catherine. And Catherine writes to her and is like, what are you doing? Stop it. Like, don't be me. You're not me. And
Yeah.
so this book hopefully is for everybody, whether you're just starting out in your spiritual life, we start at the very beginning, or someone who loves Catherine, who knows Catherine. You know, I had access to all her letters, many of which are not in print today. And so I'm hoping I'm bringing some aspects of Catherine that even the people who love her, they haven't read this letter, or they
Mhm.
don't know this fact. And so I hope it's for everybody, actually.
Well, it's wonderful. I am definitely putting it on my summer to be read list because I've got at this point 3 weeks left of school. So
That's right. You're almost done.
I'm gonna put it on the list for the summer. All right. So if people want to find out more about you and your books, and I know you have more coming out in the near future, right? Don't you have some other books coming
Taking a
out?
little
You're a busy
break. This is
lady. You're
my
taking a
third
break.
one in 3 years. So I'm
Okay.
taking a little
Okay.
break. Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
this was the end. I know you had like a busy time. This is your
Yes.
okay. All
Yeah.
right. So then you can take a bit of a break. But where can
That's
they
right.
go and find out about those books then and learn more about you?
Sure, thanks. It's joanwatson.faith is my website. So joanwatson.faith. I'm
Mhm.
also pretty active on Instagram, joan.m.watson, but that's all linked at the website. Also linked on the website is my pilgrimages. So I'm actually taking a trip to Poland to see some of my favorite saints, John Paul II, Maximilian Kolbe, Faustina, in October. That's open to everybody. And we likely will be taking a kind of retreat pilgrimage to Siena next year to match the book. So they can
Ooh.
get on my email list there, joanwatson.faith. I have a list to my link to my Substack, and I keep people up to date about what's happening.
All right. Thanks so much for coming on, Joan. It's great to talk with you again.
Good to see you, Amy. Thanks.
All right, bye. All right. Thanks to Joan for coming on again. I really am excited to look into this book. Just hearing her talk, I can think, yes, as much as I love and admire St. Catherine, I haven't dug into her writings like I have with, wait, here she is back there, Mother Cabrini's writings. And since I love St. Catherine of Siena too, I'm looking forward to really seeing what she has to say to us nowadays. I think it's going to be really enlightening and uplifting for me to read that. So if you have read any of Joan's previous books or are a fan of St. Catherine, leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought of her previous books, or if you've already read Coached by Catherine, what you thought of that one. And until next time, I'm just going to wish you all happy reading.